Okay, so afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us here in the Old Library and online as well. I'm very honoured to have been invited to give one of the presentations this afternoon, just talking a bit about the vet school, which is still fairly new, and very much on the theme of partnerships and how we can deliver innovation in education, certainly in veterinary education, through the use of highly strategically integrated partnerships. So my name is Professor Matt Jones. I'm the head of the Harper and Keele Vet School, and you'll be hearing in the second half of this short talk from Dr. Sheldon Middleton, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Garden Vets at Keele, which is the foremost of our strategic partnerships that underpins a lot of what we do at the vet school. So you'll see on the slide there our wonderful building at Keele, and for anyone who's not familiar with the vet school as a new entity here, it's very well worth a visit if you're on campus or you can get along today. Otherwise, get in touch and we'd love to show you around the building and the vet practice as well. It's a wonderful space to work in. So the theme of the talk is around partnerships and achieving more together through the use of partnerships. And of course, the really obvious thing about the vet school is that it is a partnership. It is a joint partnership between Harper Adams University and Keele University, and combining the similar but varied excellence at those two universities. It brings forward an incredibly rich opportunity of resources and expertise from which to build a new vet school, which is a challenging thing to do, but also to use it to go on and innovate and grow and develop further programmes and research and further innovation. So the two come together to combine as one. For those who don't know, Harper Adams University, 23 miles southwest of here at Keele, is a long-established agricultural institution, now a university for many years, with a lot of strengths in areas relating to agriculture. It's a genuinely farm-to-fork enterprise with 5 commercial farms, and then academic expertise and very practical applications of that expertise into all aspects of food production and development through genetics, crop science, animal breeding, animal rearing, and then into the food industries as well, and everything that goes around that, such as the business and land management aspects. But part of that as well is the focus on animal health and welfare, and there are long-established programmes in veterinary nursing and veterinary physiotherapy at Harper Adams, and so our part of the vet school that's joined Harper Adams dovetails nicely into that. There's over 3,000 animals on site, which is a wonderfully rich resource for us to plug into, and that expertise around agriculture and the veterinary professions. And then Keele, you'll know better, and Keele brings a wonderfully complementary other half, which includes a lot of the basic sciences, so a lot of research-led teaching in areas such as infectious diseases, certainly increasingly around global health and One Health, some really wonderful things going on in terms of research that involve specialists from human medicine, veterinary medicine, from the sustainability strand here at Keele, and business and others. And then we're complemented, of course, by having a very successful general practice focused medical school and allied health sciences, and that's an area of focus that the vet school wants to really build upon, and we've got very good strong support from the medical school here. So we bring the two halves together, and we've got an overwhelmingly rich resource upon which to build a vet school. So I'm just going to talk for the next short phase about what we're trying to do in veterinary education, and then we'll move on to how the partnership, and in particular the one that Sheldon's here to talk about, helps us achieve that most effectively. So our mission really it's the basis of it, of course, is education, but we also have a mission around research and innovation, and the need to embrace and work with a very rapidly changing industry. So we need to educate these students of the future, these veterinary graduates of the future, but actually the moving target is changes all the time, and that's one of the big challenges I want to talk about in a little bit more detail. This is an approach we used both at the vet school and in Garden Vets, the vet teaching hospital, to understand how to develop the practice, understand how to develop the vet school. This is a methodology called structured visual thinking, which is a strategic planning activity which runs over many months, culminating in several-day workshop where a huge range of stakeholders, I guess, is the word, the common word used. We bring people together from all parts of our world, of our ecosystem, to try to get all those perspectives together to identify the problems we're trying to solve and then get solutions for them. So there's a bit too much detail on there for you to really read, but the idea of this slide is to capture the incredible rich dynamic around the veterinary surgeon in the middle of this really challenging and often very messy environment. The pressures are increasing. Gone are the days where the vets were the guardians of knowledge, where our clients, whether they're the farming community, pet owners, horse owners, where they would come to us because we had the knowledge, we had the skills, we were the guardians to that. Those days have gone. The knowledge is out there. It is shared knowledge. And there are plenty of people working in allied professions and in other areas of whether it's agricultural nutrition or dog breeding or whatever it is. There are plenty of people now running very successful businesses, and they also own that knowledge. They also part of that. And vets now need to see ourselves much more as the guides to that knowledge, the guides to that complexity, and really helping the people we work with, whether they're pet owners or business partners, helping them to navigate that complex system. That system does bring a lot of pressures onto us as vets, and those include workload stresses, the expectations of clients. Increasingly, we can do an awful lot of wonderful things, certainly for our companion animal patients, but that requires a huge amount of increasing skills and ever-expanding skills, technology, etc. But that also places ever-increasing demands and expectations on the level of care that pet owners can expect for their beloved animals. And the phrase has come out of the US around pet parents, and that's really not an over-exaggeration about how many people view their relationship with their animals now. And that's quite hard for the veterinary graduate to navigate, those interpersonal relationships, those business demands. And then increasingly the industry's changing. So there's been fairly rampant corporatisation in the ownership of veterinary practices. Around the numbers move a little bit, between 50 and 60% of practices are under corporate ownership. That brings some benefits, that brings some career structures for some employees, but it also brings challenges around the way the businesses are run, the pressures that are on individuals to make sure that corporate growth and acquisition can go on. Now, we're educating day one vets, and historically, certainly when I went through, it was enough to have some knowledge and some practical skills, and that got you started. But now those challenges are greater. The animal health industries, the broader industry, are also rapidly developing, and where in the past your veterinary input might be through at farm level, now integrated food companies may have teams of vets who work within those food companies to advise and reach out and work as business partners within those to their wider networks of food producers through the farming network. So our day one skills that our graduates need are rapidly developing. So I've kind of phrased this next section, how to build a vet. So what does go into creating a vet in our education system now? And the bits, I sort of think of it in three parts really. So the bits that should seem obvious is knowledge. They need some working knowledge. They need knowledge around anatomy, physiology, how normal species of different types normally function and operate, how they're housed, how they're kept, how food is produced, and then some knowledge around disease processes, infectious diseases, how to understand, how to investigate, and then increasingly into how to manage those. So veterinary practice, surgery, medicine, how to engage with and work through those problems and to maintain health in otherwise healthy individuals and groups of animals. So that's the starting point, and we still need to do that. But increasingly, the roles are very varied, and we need to produce what's called, by law, we need to produce what's called omnicompetent veterinary graduates, and that means that they have a certain level of defined competence across the species. Now, there are core species that we work with a lot: the dog, the horse, the cow, cats, and then increasingly it becomes more niche. But our day one graduates have to have decent competencies across those and deep competencies in those core species. And one way of thinking about it is, as well as producing vets, within that vet, what does it mean at day one? Well, as a day one vet, you're a surgeon, you're a medic, you're a general practitioner, you're a dentist, sometimes you're a farrier, you're a physiotherapist. All these different things come together in the veterinary undergraduate curriculum, and we need to get them to a workable level on day one at the end of the 5-year training programme. So it really is quite a broad skill set. But there's a lot more beyond that, and this is what's changed in recent years. So what I've put up now is the what's called the Day 1 competencies that are set out by the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, our professional body, our professional regulatory body, which accredits vet schools. So we are, as a new vet school, working towards our first accreditation. We have our first cohort of students have just come to the end of year 4, about to embark on their final year rotations in practices, and they will graduate in a year's time. And we, as a vet school, we are then eligible for accreditation by the Royal College in a year's time. And what that means is that our graduates automatically become members of the veterinary profession, a member of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, and that's their licence to practice. So we have to get that accreditation. The accreditations, there are a set of standards, a quality framework for vet schools that we have to work to, and then there are the Day 1 competencies that are common across professions. And if you look at some of those competencies, what you don't see a lot of written large there are things around knowledge or skills. It's very much about attributes and approaches and elements that are increasingly coming out that we need to be able to evidence that we've developed and have created outcomes for our veterinary graduates in areas such as leadership, business management, intercultural competency, the ability to navigate complex systems, to be able to have reflective lifelong learning. These are very different attributes that we need to develop, and they require exposing students to not only that knowledge and those practical technical skills, surgical skills, but to real life working environments where they can understand how veterinary teams work together dynamically, how client interactions need to play out. And so all of that needs to come together across the 5-year programme. And frankly now, vet schools can no longer do this on their own. So historically, traditional vet school models had their own, what we call teaching hospitals, and those are university-owned practices almost exclusively at a referral level. So cases that couldn't be managed within a standard veterinary practice would be referred in, and traditionally the referral centres were the vet school hospitals. That's where the expertise was, that's where the more highly qualified clinical specialists would go and orientate, and that was the model, and that's what most of us of my generation went through. You would have the occasional bit of first opinion general practice type work, typically through a charity partner, the RSPCA, the PDSA was where we went to get to see some common real cases, which was a little bit mad if you think about it. So the 80-20 rule was really very much, you're seeing these complex, interesting, challenging cases which don't really prepare you for your day 1 job, because 85% of veterinary graduates will go into those general practice roles. So there was a bit of an anomaly there. Increasingly, all vet schools have used partnerships, so for many decades. But the model has changed now to the point where new vet schools typically don't build a suite of their own teaching referral hospitals, but will look for targeted commercial partnerships, typically with practices that are already established. And what that does is open up a broad representative caseload for students to experience different authentic workplace learning environments where they can hone those skills, bring that knowledge and those technical skills to bear in those environments, and then start to hone those professional competencies around those other dynamics. So more recent vet schools have been designed along this what's called a distributed clinical curriculum model, which is where the centres of clinical experience are out. They are part of a wider network, separate geographically from the vet schools, but highly connected to enable the quality assured education to go on. So when designing a new vet school and looking at how we can do this properly and looking at the problem we have to solve in education, veterinary education, which is a big one, we again went through this strategic planning exercise, and we're navigating the challenges that are placed upon us by our 2 university parents. What are the drivers at Keele? What does Keele need to achieve from a vet school? Why does Keele want a vet school? What does Harper Adams want from a vet school? So these 2 partners that manage us and created us have their needs and drivers. The industry has its needs and drivers, the regulator has its needs and drivers, and the paying population, the client-owning population, the farming population also want that. So we tried to make sense of this around what we call an exam question in this methodology of how to create an economically sustainable model of veterinary education in the long term. veterinary education is the most expensive undergraduate programme to deliver, more expensive than medicine and dentistry. It costs on average around about £26,000 a year to train a vet. We get around about £21,000 made up of the student fee and central government money through the Office for Students. And so there is a shortfall, and that shortfall has to be addressed somehow through tweaking with the business model, how we invest in the buildings and infrastructure. And one way of doing that is to have highly integrated strategic partnerships with commercial partners. And what we've done differently, and Sheldon will in a minute tell you much more about the detail of what this partnership is build a bespoke partnership. Now, this is just a little pause here to just a little reflection on partnership. I don't know if any of you know, as alumni, perhaps you might know Jonathan Wassling, my former boss here at Keele, who was the godfather of the vet school concept. Here's Jonathan at Nantwich show with one of our models called a Breeding Betsy, which is a reproductive model simulator of a cow. And we can put, where the little girl is there, we can put things in there that simulate the reproductive organs of the cow at different stages of the estrus cycle, so that the students can have opportunities to palpate and find out what they need to do, and we can see what they're feeling, and are they reporting the right things that they're feeling. So Jonathan was the godfather, and very much helped us work within this partnership model. So what we did with the teaching hospital in the building here at Keele is we wanted a long-term strategic partner with whom we could work to create a contemporary teaching hospital that had the right kind of caseload for those day one competencies, for the career destinations of the majority of those students, could also fulfil our mission around education, research, community, and developing everyone's careers and an inclusive environment for all. So our model is predicated on partnerships. We have a range of them, several with pre-existing practices, but the one we want to talk a little bit more about today really is where our students will spend a lot of their final year and some of their time in earlier years, which is Garden Vets at Keele, in the same building that we share at Keele, which has been purpose designed to meet our outcomes. So I'm going to hand over to Sheldon now to tell you a little bit more about the practice and what it means for an incoming commercial strategic partner to have this opportunity to work with us and grow together. So over to you, Sheldon.
Brilliant, thank you, Matt. That one's forward, right. So, as Matt's kindly said, I am a vet. I'm CEO of Garden Vets. I'm not an academic. I'm not employed by either Harper Adams or Keele universities. And I head up and part own Garden Vets at Keele as a private company that's come into partnership on site within the university. So there are several elements to this. One is that we could easily have a veterinary practice in Stoke if we wished, just on in any old site. I'm sure we can make a success of it. So why have we chosen as a business to partnership with an educator? So what are the advantages to the business, but also what are the advantages to us being on site within a university? So there's a partnership with the vet school, partnership with the university, and the advantages both ways, but primarily from a Garden Vets perspective. So we have been open about, I think this is our 8th month now. Caseload is building quite nicely. And we've just had the 4th year students through. We're about to have 5th year students starting next week, in fact, on the 8th. As a business, now you'll recognise this this is the same company that did the vet school's structured visual thinking. This is our version, so this is very much focused on the Garden Vets model. But Garden Vets was designed from scratch to go into a vet school. It wasn't designed, it wasn't a practice and then we thought, oh, actually, that's quite a nice place, let's just shove it in there. It was designed from the outset to be a teaching hospital. And why did we bother doing that? Well, because of the opportunities that it presents. So we, in the profession, and I've had representation roles within the profession as well, it is fairly well known that the profession at the moment is not working terribly well. We've only got one business model, that's a pay-as-you-go business model, and there's various flavours of that, whether it's an insurance company that pays or the client. But essentially, that's what you've got. You've got 6 corporate groups that own, I think it's about 60 or 70% of practices now. We've got a significant amount of burnout from the staff, from vets. Usually there's a cycle where they'll graduate and then leave after 5 years. We've had issues with Brexit. So Brexit has meant that we've had to, increasingly certify exports at the border. So that's taken vets away to that new role. B, it's getting better, but historically it meant that we couldn't get the European vets across to supplement our workforce. And the other thing that happened was COVID, and COVID meant that everyone got a puppy. So the demand for veterinary services went up substantially. Combine all these things, and you've got an underserved pet population, wherever you look in the country. And the outcome of that is that clients are finding it hard to get into a vet because they're closing their books, because they have, you can't just keep taking on work. So those are a few of the problems, but and the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority, have identified some problems within the profession, and they have launched a full-scale inquiry about lack of competition, lack of transparency of pricing, and a few other bits and pieces. So that's the snapshot of the profession. So we have this fantastic opportunity to say, okay, we're starting from scratch. This is, we're as founder investors, we have the opportunity to design this thing from the ground up, which is why we did the structural visual thinking, because that relates to one question, and then, what's your output, essentially? Our output is healthy animals, and we need to be economically sustainable. We need to have staff that don't burn out, all these things. And then it's, what are the barriers? Who are the stakeholders? And you work it all the way back to say, well, just because this is how it's done now, is there a different way of achieving that? And the partnership with the vet school and the university has been a significant enabler of us to be able to attempt that. Because what's come out of this is not just the design of a practice as a teaching practice, and yes, that has advantages for students, clearly, but actually the fact that the entire business is developed on an educational footing means that everyone in that business is obliged to educate, and it's not just the students, it's each other, it's clients, it's members of staff, and the culture that brings is one of continuous development, which is incredibly helpful in a veterinary practice. But one of the other things that we're doing is that we've actually created a new business model. So Garden Vet initially, certainly, was entirely subscription-based. So you pay a set amount every month, and everything is included. And that eliminates an awful lot. It eliminates the pressure on the vets in the clinic, because they're not talking about money. Vets hate talking about money. Everyone thinks they roll around in their Bentleys. They are not very well paid, and they don't talk about money very well. And certainly they don't talk about money to the extent that they need to, because veterinary medicine is, as Matt has said, incredibly to deliver educationally. It's incredibly expensive to deliver on the ground as well, and that needs paying for somehow. So a subscription model does that. It also means that pets are brought in at an earlier stage of disease process. So it's better for animal welfare. That also makes it cheaper, because we can identify the problems earlier on, so we're not taking a lump that's that big off, we're taking a lump that's that big off, with better clinical outcomes. But built into that is also a system around the staff and the structure of the building itself. Because what we've done is we've also partnered with, we've got a clinical psychologist on staff, and the responsibility there is to create a psychologically healthy organisation to trying to support and build and become integral psychologically healthy practices within the people, but also just within the structure of the business. And the other thing we've got is technology. So technology in the veterinary profession, it has historically been in pockets good, but usually not linked together. And so there's been very poor uptake of technology unless there's been an absolute forced desire and need for it. So we've designed that all simultaneously, and that's where partnering with a university and with a vet school has been incredibly helpful. So the building itself is designed with students in mind, because it wasn't built when we started that blueprint. So you can see this is our prep area, and this is about a quarter of the prep area, and it's pretty big. I don't know if that's so we've got an endoscopy room there. This is our main prep area. There's a CT scanner behind where I'm standing now, an X-ray machine. But it's fairly spacious, and every room is spacious. We've got theatres which are about 4 times the size of the average veterinary practice theatre, because we've got students in, because we've got visiting academics and member of staff in. But also, particularly with Keele principles, the reason I'm showing the dog kennels here is because one of the core principles of our procurement was with sustainability in mind. So absolutely, partnering with Keele University, we've got access to the solar farm and the wind turbines for our electricity, but actually in our procurement policies, we have an environmental line that says, what's the environmental impact on this? So it's not terribly well lit here, but these are metal gates, metal kennel doors, and there are lots of them, and they're not just here, they're all throughout the practice. They won the contract because they were more local than an alternative supplier who were slightly cheaper. But these had a lower carbon footprint because they only had to be transported up the road rather than flown in. So that's one example of the university's back influence on our business. I mentioned the people aspect and how we're trying to do that differently as well. So instead of a job description, we've got job canvases. And the slight variation in nomenclature is because this is a dynamic document. This is worked on with the individual. And it's around, again, behaviours, attributes, rather than tasks, rather than, this is a vet nurse, rather than, you've got to put a catheter in everything every morning or do your rounds or whatever. It's about how you contribute to the business, what we expect your knowledge and skills to be, what your key activities will be. I mean, that's probably more like the average job description. Who are you partnering with? How are we engaging with you? What are our core values? To ensure that we've got this marrying of the business and the individual. But the most important thing is that in every job canvas, I can't see where it is here, but there is education is built in. So you can't have a job with us if you're not going to be educating. Because we have demonstrated partnership already with the university, with the vet school, that has allowed us to partner with other people. So these machines here are all, you probably just see it there, a company called IDEX. So IDEX is a huge global laboratory, provider of laboratory facilities for vets, based in Holland, and they have a significant international market. Most practices will have these. They are very keen to partner with us, A, because of the innovation that we bring and the technology that we bring, but B, because we're seeing students all the time. So presumably they want their students to see us using their facilities and their images. But because we are partnered with the vet school, we've got significant leverage partnering with other businesses as well. And then the design of the building. You've seen a few bits and pieces there, but the design, this particular aspect is the waiting area for dogs. It's designed with dogs in mind, and the idea is that these cubicles, you sit in the cubicle, but you're separated from neighbouring dogs. We've got plugged into some of these. There's you can get pheromone plugins that the bitch gives off when she is nursing her pups. So it's a reassurance, it's a calming pheromone. They're not eyeballing each other. There's space outside for aggressive dogs. There's a separate waiting area for cats. There's a separate waiting area for prey species, so rabbits, guinea pigs, that sort of thing. And everything is designed to try and minimise stress, not just for the clients, not just for the staff, but also for our patients. And this is just another example of visiting other potential partners. Crown Vet and there with Matt. We've been to joint shows together and been on the same, much like today, on the same stage, on the same platform, singing from the same hymn sheet, because the idea behind the partnership is that it is exactly that. It is a dynamic, lasting, strong partnership for future growth. And this is showing the integration of the students. So one of the changes that we have tried to make and embed within Garden Vets at Keele is that we want to, rather than in a traditional hospital where the students would be observing, they might be integrating with consultation or something like that, but we wanted them to be actually members of the team. So they are members of the team. They're here in the teal tops. This is handover in rounds in the morning. They're talking about the patients. They will have done the we call it TPR, temperature, pulse, and respiration rates of all the patients to report back to the vets. They'll have taken the dogs out for a wee. They may even have done some of the admissions consultations for surgeries for that morning. So they are reporting back saying, Mrs. Jones says that, he's had a bad night, or we need to look out for that, or can you look in his ears while he's under anaesthetic? So they are an integral part of the Garden Vets team. And this is me teaching, and this is the fourth year rotations, and this is where the magic happens. This is the brilliant bit, because we're teaching the students one-on-one. We're teaching them how to give the medication, what to give, and then we follow this case all the way through. So this student has seen the case in, she's done the admit, she's seen the animal in the kennel, she's worked out the pre-med, it's been checked by me, she's now giving the pre-med, so this is the cat in the cage, giving the pre-med, and then she will then induce anaesthesia, obviously supervised by me, and then we'll take it into theatre, and here you can see that she's doing the surgery. I'm not. My gloves are clean. I mean, if I need to dive in, then I can, but I didn't. So I actually just stood there, and she did the whole thing from start to finish. So the educational benefit of being able to do that is huge, because then this student can say, I've done a spay from start to finish, quite legitimately, because I didn't touch it. But patient safety is absolutely up there as well, because I'm monitoring all the time, and if I need to step in, I can. So, that's it.
See you.